I know what's under the city. Not pipes and cable runs, not the things that are supposed to be there. I mean the other thing. The thing that was there first. There is a ghost under the Mensah building in the old industrial district of this city. Ghost is the wrong word. I know it's the wrong word, but it's the closest word I have. This thing has been there since before the building existed, since before the street existed, since before anyone built anything on that ground at all. It is not haunting the space. It is not a residue, not an echo, not an impression. It is not sad. It is waiting. It has an agenda. I know what the agenda is because I watched it work on two people I was standing next to, and because Ikenna almost didn't come back from it, and because of what I found 3 weeks later when I looked at the survey photographs from inside the passage. Whatever I describe to you will be smaller than what it actually was. I need you to know that going in. This is what happened below the Mensah building. I work in structural assessment, small teams that evaluate buildings before demolition or major renovation. You go in, you document what's there, you identify risk factors, you produce a report, empty buildings with a clipboard and a torch. It is, for the most part, unglamorous. The Mensah building was a 7-story commercial block, built in the 1970s, empty for a decade after the company that owned it dissolved. Final structural survey before demolition. Standard procedure. There were 4 of us. Me, Tunde, mid-40s, 20 years in the field, not the most technically competent person I've ever worked with. Grace, our documentation lead, and Ikenna, the youngest, 2 years out of university, still young enough to find empty buildings interesting rather than tedious. Day 1 was the upper floors. Day 2 was the basement and the sub-basement, listed on the plans as a utility space, storage, mechanical equipment. Check it, photograph it, sign off. Day 1 was fine. We left at 6. We came back at 8 the next morning. The basement was exactly what you'd expect. Concrete floor, industrial shelving, abandoned equipment under rotted plastic sheeting, damp concrete and rust. The access point to the sub-basement was at the back, a heavy metal door set into the concrete wall, industrial hinges, a locking bar that had been cut at some point. Years ago, the metal around the cut long since oxidized. Tunde noted the cut lock, documented it, pushed the door open. The smell hit us immediately. Not damp, not rot. Cold and mineral, like water from very deep underground. Water that hadn't been near a surface in a long time. The air on the other side of that door was noticeably, specifically colder, as if the space had been kept refrigerated. Tunde said, "Ventilation issue, common in buildings of this era." He stepped through. Standing at that door, looking into the darkness below the stairs, I had the specific sensation that the space was occupied, not by a person, by something that registered my presence the way a person registers someone entering a room. I followed Tunde down the stairs. The sub-basement was wrong from the first step, and not atmospherically wrong, structurally wrong. The space did not match the building plans. The plans listed a rectangular utility space, 12 meters by 8. What we walked into was significantly larger. The floor space extended well beyond the building's footprint in 3 directions. The space went further than the building. Tunde measured it twice. The second measurement confirmed the first. We were standing in a space that extended at least 6 meters beyond the external walls above us. He marked this in his documentation without comment. The walls were not concrete. They were stone, not dressed stone, Not quarried stone placed by recent hands, something older, shaped and fitted with a precision that made mortar unnecessary. The seams between the stones were tight, perfect. The stone drew heat out of the air near it. I put my hand flat against it and pulled back after 2 seconds. It was wrong in the way extreme cold is wrong, not just temperature, but intent. Tunda put his hand on the same stone, held it longer than I had. He said, "This was here before the basement was constructed above it." I said, "How far before?" He shrugged. He said, "Long before." There was a passage in the far wall, an opening in the stone, 2 meters high, 1 meter wide, no frame, no hinges, no evidence it had ever been sealed. Just darkness beyond. Our torches reached maybe 5 meters in before the dark absorbed them. The cold was strongest at the opening, not a draft. There was no air movement, static cold radiating outward, the way heat radiates from a fire. And I had not experienced cold as a presence before that moment. Ikenna walked toward it. I said his name. He stopped. He said there were marks on the wall just inside the opening. He wanted to see what they were. Tunda said, "Document from here. We do not enter passages not listed on the plans." Ikenna raised his camera from where he stood and fired a flash into the passage. They were not marks, handprints, covering both walls of the passage from knee height to as high as the stone reached, pressed flat. Dark, not pigment, not charcoal, dark in a way that suggested the material had soaked into the stone rather than sitting on the surface. Hundreds of them. In some sections, the hands overlapped, layer over layer, a palimpsest of pressed palms going back into the dark as far as the flash could reach. Ikenna said very quietly, "Most of those are children hands." He was right. We should have left, not because we were reckless, because of what happened before we could. Tunde was documenting the passage opening from a distance when the lights went out. All 4 torches simultaneously. Not flickered, extinguished. 4 independent battery-powered devices switched off at the same moment. The darkness had weight. That's the only way I can describe it. Not an absence, a presence that pressed. Grace said my name. 1 word, controlled, the control itself telling me how frightened she was. I said to stay still. I said it was a power fault, knowing that wasn't possible. I said it because the alternative required information I didn't have yet. Tunda said, "The passage." There was light in the passage, not a torch, not electric light. A faint luminescence from the walls themselves, from the handprints, emanating from within the stone. Pale, blue-white, barely enough to create outlines, but enough to see that the passage extended a long way, enough to see the figure. A shape at the far edge of the visible passage, 5 or 6 meters from the opening. Upright, the shape of a woman, taller than a normal adult by 1.5 heads. Arms at its sides but angled outward, slightly wrong, in the way things are wrong when they are imitating a posture rather than holding it naturally. Head bent forward, not bowed, forward, as if the neck were longer than it should be, or the head heavier. It was looking at us, not with visible eyes, with attention, with the specific quality of pressure that changes when something focuses on you. I know the feeling of being observed by something with intent. This was that. Then it moved, not toward us, away, back into the passage, slowly, deliberately, not fleeing, leading. The handprints on the walls pulsed once as it moved past them, a current of light traveling down the passage in sequence. Ikenna took a step toward the passage opening, then another, then a third. He was at the threshold. I don't know if I shouted or just moved. I was across the room in the dark, and I had his arm before I understood I was moving. I pulled him back hard enough that we both stumbled. He didn't fight me. That's what I remember. He didn't resist. But he didn't come back to himself either, not immediately. He stood there with my hand on his arm and his face toward the passage and the light in the passage pulsing, and for a few seconds I genuinely did not know if he was still making his own decisions. Then he blinked. He looked at me. He said, "I was walking." I said, "I know." He said, "I do not remember deciding to walk." I said, "Torches. Everyone try your torches." Mine came on, then Grace's, then Tunde's. Ikenna's last. It flickered, caught. The torchlight killed the luminescence. The passage went dark. The figure was gone. Nobody spoke for a long time. Then Grace said, "We are leaving now." And that's when we found out the door at the top of the stairs was locked. The door was locked from the outside. A heavy-gauge metal, industrial locking bar seated in its bracket on the other side. Nobody had been in the basement with us. Nobody had come down the stairs behind us. The door had been standing open when we descended. No signal on any of our phones. Enough battery in our equipment for 3 to 4 hours. No second exit that we could see. What followed was 2 hours of learning the rules. Not rules someone told us. Rules we inferred from what stopped happening when we obeyed them, and what happened when we didn't. The first rule was about light. When our torches stayed on and we stayed in the main space, nothing happened. Temperature constant, passage dark, nothing approached. When Ikenna switched his torch off to conserve battery, the cold intensified immediately. Not gradually, it immediately. And the handprints at the edge of the passage pulsed. Once, slow. He switched it back on. The cold retreated. He switched it off again, watching. The cold returned, and this time a faint luminescence built at the opening. He switched it back on. He said, not to anyone in particular. It responds to the dark. The second rule was about proximity. When Grace moved to photograph the passage opening from a new angle, within 2 meters of it, the figure was back. Not at the far end, closer, 4 meters in, facing outward. Same posture, head wrong, watching. Grace backed away 1 slow step at a time. The figure stayed still until she was back with us. Then Tunde said the thing that reframed everything. It is not trying to scare us. It is trying to get us into the passage. He was right. Everything was architecture. The darkness, the withdrawing figure, the luminescent invitation. Something had a goal, and the goal was to get one of us through that opening voluntarily, which meant the passage was where it wanted us, and therefore the passage was where we could not go. Then Ikenna went still, the stillness of someone listening, face neutral, not blank, neutral, receiving information and processing it. I watched his eyes and they were present. He was in his body, but behind his expression there was a distance I hadn't seen in him before. He said, "She says the way out is through the passage." Grace asked who said that. He said he heard it directly, close to his ear, directed at him specifically. He said she told him the passage connected to the old drainage network, which connected to the surface. He said she told him they needed to decide quickly. I said to Ikenna, "She wants you to go first." A pause. Then, "Yes." I said, "That is how you know she is lying." He came back. Whatever she had built between them in the previous 30 seconds, it broke when the logic broke. He was angry in the specific way you get angry when you understand you have been worked. He said, "She lied. She knew I would want to get out. She used that." And Grace said, "If the passage is how she wants us to leave, What does that mean about the door? We all arrived at the same answer simultaneously. She had locked the door to make the passage look like the only option, which meant she was holding the door closed, which meant the door wasn't the problem. Her continued interest was the problem. We had to make her lose interest. I need to tell you what I know about what was in that space. And then I need to tell you what I don't know, because those are different sections and the second one is more important. I found one reference in the city's digitized oral history archive that described the site. It called it, in translation, the place where the record is kept. When I read that, I thought I understood what it meant. The handprints are a record. Every person who enters that passage leaves a print, not voluntarily. The stone takes one from anyone who goes through. That is what she does. That is what she has been doing. Under this ground, and undersea whatever gets built over her, for longer than I can account for. What she cannot do is compel entry. This is the limit. She can extinguish lights. She can lower the temperature of a sealed space. She can appear in a form that triggers your most basic impulse toward a recognizable human shape. She can speak directly into the ear of the person she is identified as most susceptible. She can make her offer feel like the only logical option, but she cannot make you walk through. Every handprint on those walls, the adults, and the hundreds of small ones, those people walked in themselves. That is what I thought I understood. Here is what I don't understand. 3 weeks after the survey, I was reviewing the photographs Grace had taken inside the passage, the flash photographs from before the lights went out. I was examining them at high resolution, trying to document the handprint density for the heritage report. The handprints near the opening matched what I remembered. Hundreds of them, overlapping, the majority small. But further into the passage, as far as the flash had reached before the darkness absorbed it, the walls changed. The handprints gave way to something else. Not carvings, not inscriptions. Something that I cannot describe accurately because when I try to put it into language, the language comes out wrong. Marks in the stone that followed a logic I couldn't find the shape of. Not random, not decorative, purposeful. As if the passage wasn't just a collection site, but something with a further function I hadn't seen from the threshold. I've shown the photographs to 2 people I trust. One said the marks were natural stress fractures in the stone. The other said nothing for a long time, and then asked me where I'd been. The oral history called it the place where the record is kept. I thought I knew what record meant. I thought record meant the handprints, the accumulation of everyone who had entered. A collection. I'm less certain about that now. What is further in than the handprints, and what it means that the walls change, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I do. What I know is that something has been building something in that passage for a very long time. And the handprints near the entrance may be the least significant part of it. She is not a haunting. She is a process. But what the process is, Farrer, what the record is being kept in service of, that I cannot tell you. And that is the part that stays with me. Tunde ran it like a briefing. He said we needed to understand what she was responding to and then stop producing it. Light bothered her, or disrupted her access. She could only reach one person at a time. The question was, what made her choose Ikenna? Ikenna said, I went closest. She went for whoever came nearest the opening. Tunde said, then nobody goes near the opening. He paused. Then he said, she responds to the dark. When we extinguish light, she moves. She cannot simultaneously manipulate the light and hold the door. It's if there is a mechanical logic to what she does, that is the lever. I said, Grace and Ikenna go to the door. Tunde and I handle the torches. We switch off together, hold 10 seconds, switch back on. You try the door while we are dark. Grace said, and if it opens the passage instead of releasing the door? I said, you will hear it. Do not go toward it. Go up the stairs. They crossed to the stairs. Tunde and I stood in the center of the room, our torches the only light. I could see the passage in my peripheral vision, the darkness inside it absolute. Tunde said, ready. I said, ready. We killed the torches. The cold hit immediately. The handprints pulsed. The passage lit up. I did not look at it. I kept my eyes on where the stairs should be, in the dark. And I heard Grace reach the door, and I heard the bar lift. I don't know if she released it because she was occupied elsewhere, and her hold on the door simply failed. I don't know if she calculated that getting us into the passage while we were disoriented in the dark was worth releasing the door. I don't know if she plans that way. I don't know if she thinks. The bar lifted. Grace said my name. I said, torches. The torches came on. The passage went dark. We went up the stairs, all four of us together, moving fast. Tunde said once very quietly, do not look back. We got through the door. We wedged it with a piece of broken shelving. We walked out of the building. It was 3:15 in the afternoon. We had been underground for 4 hours and 32 minutes. I need to tell you what happened to Ikenna. He was functional when we came out, shaken but present. We filed our incident report with the contracting company, documented the anomalous structural features, recommended the sub-basement be sealed pending heritage review. We did not include the figure or the voice in the official report. I'm not proud of that. I made it because I needed the structural anomalies to survive the paperwork. 6 days later, Ikenna came into the office and tried to read the floor plans from the Mensah survey. Floor plans are basic documents, rectangles, measurements, labels. He had been reading floor plans since his first week on the job. He stood at the desk with the plans in front of him for a long time. Then he said, without looking up, I cannot read this. I looked at the plans. Yes, they were legible. Clear, clean, standard format. I read them back to him. Dimensions, room labels, structural notations. He listened. Then he looked at the page again and said, I can see the lines. I can see the numbers. I cannot make them mean anything. He could read everything else. His phone, emails, reports, text. The floor plans specifically. Spatial documents, measured grids, the precise representation of physical space. He could not parse them. He told me this had been happening since the second day after the survey. He had not said anything because he thought it would resolve. It has not resolved. I think about what she took from him specifically, not his memory, not his language, the ability to read the shape of spaces, the ability to understand from a representation that's where things are and how they connect, the specific cognition that would allow someone to interpret a passage, to know from the document what is further in. I don't know if that was deliberate. I don't know if she takes deliberately or if she takes whatever she can reach. I don't know which of those is worse. 3 weeks later, he called me. He said he had been dreaming about the passage, not nightmares. He was clear about that. He said they were more like invitations. In the dreams, she showed him what the passage looked like further in. The walls beyond the handprints, the marks I had seen in the photographs. He said in the dreams they were not marks. He said they resolved into something readable. He said he could not read floor plans anymore, but he could read those. Or I told him to see someone. I told him she had found a new lever, that taking his ability to read spatial documents and then offering it back to him in her space was the same architecture as the locked door in the passage, the same move. I told him knowing it was his best protection. He said, "What if she is showing me something real? What if something down there is actually worth seeing?" I said, "There probably is. That is how it works." He has not called again. I hope that means he's sleeping better. Before we hung up, he asked me something. He asked me why I kept saying the hands were small. I hope it doesn't mean something else. Tunda filed a supplementary report 2 months later recommending the site be referred to the National Cultural Heritage Authority. In the section marked Additional Observations, one line, "The sub-basement predates all known construction on the site. Recommend no further access until the passage has been assessed by qualified personnel. Recommend assessment be conducted by personnel who have been briefed on the specific hazards involved. I am available to brief." He has not been contacted by anyone. The demolition order is on hold. There is a heritage assessment pending, underfunded, backlogged. At some point, someone will make a decision. Either the building comes down and those walls are exposed to a construction site full of workers who do not know the rules, or someone goes in with the knowledge of what they are dealing with and does something more careful. I don't know which outcome I'm more frightened of. I've been trying to figure out what she is. I don't think she's malicious in the way we usually mean that word. Malice implies personal feeling. I don't think she feels anything about us. I think she is old enough and has been doing what she does long enough that we are not people to her. We are hands that haven't yet left their prints on the wall. She is a process. She has been running that process under this ground for longer than my profession, my country, my language has existed. Which is, if you think about it, worse than malice. The hardest part isn't what I saw. It's that she didn't notice me leaving. She was occupied with the dark, and with the light she was building in the passage, with whatever calculation she makes when she decides to release a door. And I walked out, and she let me, because I was not the one she was close to. Ikenna was the one she was close to. Ikenna got out. I used to think I understood what old meant, what deep meant, what it meant for a place to have history. What is in that sub-basement predates any reference point I have for any of those words. There is something under this city that was collecting people before this city existed. That has been running its process through everything that has been built over it. That cannot be locked out, only held at a distance by the specific and fragile condition of everyone nearby refusing to walk toward it. That condition is not stable. I looked at those photographs for a long time. The marks beyond the handprints, whatever is being built further in the dark. I have 3 explanations for what I think I saw. I believe one of them. I am not going to tell you which one. But if you have been underground, if you have been somewhere the walls were older than they should be, and you saw something that moved by withdrawing, that offered you a way out that required you to go further in. Tell me if the prints on your walls changed further down. Don't describe what they changed into, just yes or no. The door is still sealed. Ikenna still cannot read floor plans. She is still there. Now you know.